So I'm going to quickly do a little comparison here. This is kind of the breakdown of how I would approach a normal comparison with a class that I know well, and see where it is that I can get some damage. I'm not going to go too deep into this because there's not a whole lot to learn. This is a pretty good attempt versus a top 3 eye level attempt. There are some minor differences, but it's not as informative as something that we'll do later, which is somebody did bad and compare them to somebody who did good. So the first thing I look at generally is going to be in the summary here. So I'm going to see, all right, am I gearing similarly to them? Am I valuing the stats similar to them? So obviously our intellect is very close. We've got similar type of gear. Makes sense. He's got less spirit. I've got more spirit. I've got slightly more crit and slightly less haste. He likely has a little bit more spell power. Our talents are the same. So if, again, I'm doing poorly and he's doing well, then if our talents are different, I'm going to say, okay, what are your talents? Why are they better than mine? But they're the same here. When I look through his gear, he's got some regalia on the head. I don't have the regalia on the head. He's got the 245 neck. He's got the 232 crafted belt. I've got the other 232 crafted belt. 245 legs, 245 legs, 252 boots. This is before I got the other 252 boots. So here I've got the 245 boots. By and large, similar gear. Pharaoh's gloves are really nice. They're not the end of the world to not have. Conductive seal is a great ring. My second ring is this one. Not as good, but not a big deal. Star Shard and Leviathan Fueling Manual are nice. I don't really like having the hit offhand from Ulduar. I like my weapon better. So we have very similar gear, and if I'm looking at his gems, he's got the same kind of gems as me. He's got the purified dreadstones. He's got a lot of reckless ametrines. He's got rune cardinal rubies in the red spots. Same meta gem, obviously. That's what I'm looking for. When I talked about the enchants being wrong in the early video, I'm talking about here. If you want to see what the enchants are, you can hover the weapon and it'll tell you there at the end of the stats. It's got that green plus 63 spell power. That's the mighty spell power to weapon. You can see here 30. So if you want to see what somebody's enchanting their gear with, you can hover it. Now I'm going to look at the damage curves. So here, his is in magenta, mine's in a teal. I ramp a little harder and faster, and then I drop down here. There's a little gap where he's performing better than I am in this 35 to minute 15 section. So that's 40 seconds that he's doing better than me, and that's significant. So this is an area that I'll look at to see what I could do differently to get this type of performance out of it. And then we go through, obviously, I'm doing a little bit more on the ramp down from the worms. It might just be that they killed their first worm a little faster. I've got 2 targets to hit, something like that. I'm not terribly worried about it. It's nice to have the extra damage. Here in Ice Howl, he ramps faster, right? You see this magenta line start going up faster. Mine takes a dip first. It could be a difference of when the bosses spawned, but it's not necessarily. This is their second lust for their infernals, for their shadow fiends, that kind of thing. Still would want to do it into this rather than after it. This is bad timing. So then he spikes a little harder than I do, right? So I could look and see what he did to spike a little harder. I'm not terribly worried about that in this log. What I am more concerned about is this dip right here. So you see me drop way down and he stays relatively consistent. So I'm just going to do some quick math and give an idea. His DPS is 10,460. Mine is 9908. I'm going to select here and see what the damage difference is and what the amount of time that was spent was. So here we have 10,260 DPS and 4,086 DPS. And the time goes from 5:07 to 5:36, so that's 29 seconds. And then we're going to look at the other gap here, right? Where he's getting 12.5, I'm getting 8.687. And this is, again, about 40 seconds. So together these are about a minute of the fight, and the fight, again, lasts about 6 minutes. So it looks fairly small on the graph, like they look kind of close if you're looking at it just from an outside perspective. But once you realize how much weight they have, this is 1/6 of the fight that I'm doing a significant portion less, and I'm just going to do the calculation of how much my damage would have been if I'd have managed to keep up his level in just those little sections. So the differentials for these two curves in these gaps here are, this is about 11% of the fight. He's doing about 12,500. I'm doing about 8,700. His contribution of the damage that he does in this section is about 1,380 DPS. My contribution of my total damage that I do in this fight is about 962 DPS. So if I take this out of the fight and do nothing, my DPS would drop by 962, his by 1,386. So the difference between those is 424 damage, not in this phase, but over the course of the entire fight. That number goes up by 424 if I match him here. Similarly over here, this is about 8% of the fight. He's doing 10,000 DPS roughly. I'm doing a little under 5,000. That contribution for him is 845. For me is 401. You don't have to do this math. I'm just proving a point here. The difference between those is 444 DPS over the course of the fight. So if I match this gap and change nothing else that I do in any part of the fight, I gain 868 total DPS. That puts me at about 10,700 DPS for the fight total. This guy was a top 3 eye level parse. Obviously, if you're parsing in the top 3 or 5 or 10 or really 50 for your eye level, and your eye level is appropriate for the content, then you're doing phenomenally. You don't need to worry too much about changing things. But obviously, I can fix that, and I can fix that, and it will boost my damage by almost 10% total over the course of the fight. 8.5% total. That's a lot of damage, and that really, really boosts up your parse. If everybody does that much more damage, it compounds. It makes it a really trivial thing to kill these bosses. So I'm just going to briefly look in here and see what the damage breakdown was, what he did. So I've got 11 casts of Fireball. He's got 12 casts of Fireball. That shouldn't make the difference. He's got 91% crit here. I've got 72% crit. Nothing I can do about that. Pyros, I cast 5 Pyros. He casts 7. He's critting more, so he's getting more Pyros out. His Pyros are critting 100% of the time. My Pyros are critting 20% of the time. Again, I seem to have offended somebody, and I'm not getting my crits. My Living Bombs that I'm casting 7. He's casting 5. My damage contribution by Living Bomb is 1,200 plus about 500. His Living Bombs are hitting a little bit more. I think I cast 1 clearly that didn't blow up. So 7 casts of Living Bomb, 4 of them blew up. That's a mistake. If you're casting on something that's not going to die, then you're wasting damage there. So I wasted a couple globals. He didn't. 5 and 5. That's what you're looking for. And he's spending the rest of his time casting Fireball, casting Pyros. But that mistake doesn't make up for the fact that I've got 72% crit here and 20% for Pyro. That's just bad luck. Keep fighting. Nothing you can do about that. So I can't match that based on what I've done wrong. I can improve, but I can't match it. So then we're going to look at this section here and see. I cast 6 fireballs. He casts 8 fireballs. He misses 1 somehow. I could look into it, but it's not that important. He's getting 2 pyros. I'm getting 1 pyro because, again, in this section, I've got low crit. My pyro doesn't crit. His pyros both crit. So when you look at the pyro DPS, I get 1 off. It does not crit. It contributes 156 to this total DPS section. His are contributing 1,700. So there are certain things that you can't fix about what you did. Obviously, if he's casting 8 fireballs and I'm casting 6, he's casting 2 living bombs, I'm casting 2 living bombs. He's casting 2 pyros, I'm casting 1 pyro. This is all in the scope of the same time frame. Nothing's changed. If he's casting more abilities than I am, he's got 1 extra global on pyro. He's got 2 extra fireballs. I'm doing something wrong. I'm not casting well. I can go back and look at this in the replay and see what I'm doing positionally in this replay tab here and see maybe I'm just set up wrong. Maybe it's when something's going on or I'm just not multi-dotting well, that kind of thing. You can then go back and look and see what specifically you did differently, but the big difference here is he's critting, I'm not. And as a fire mage, that's the biggest RNG factor in your kit. Other classes, obviously, crit matters, but this is one where it matters a whole lot more. So, again, I'm not too worried about these gaps, but again, I would want to find out where I can get those 2 extra fireballs in here, and I would want to find out what I was doing that maybe not be able to get them.